to another great episode of the Bourbon Road with your hosts, Jim and Brian, where they talk bourbon and, of course, drink bourbon. Grab yourself a pour, kick back, and enjoy another trip down the Bourbon Road.
We are excited to have back once again for 2023 our sponsor, Seldom Seen Farms, with their bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup. Kevin and his staff there do a wonderful job. We're excited to have them sign on again this year to support the Bourbon Road, and we love their product. And with it being Christmas season, we hope our listeners will visit seldomseenmaple.com and check out all they have to offer. A lot of great gifts there. Bourbon aged maple syrup, bourbon barrel aged coffee, Rickhouse Reserve barbecue sauce. You can buy it by the bottle, you can buy it by the case, you can even get bourbon maple candle, and they even have maple cotton candy. Definitely check out seldomseenmaple.com. Support our sponsors, support Kevin and his family there. They have a 5,000 maple tap operation in Ohio, and they're doing it right. They don't just produce maple syrup. They're also bourbon enthusiasts, and we love them to death. Again, go check out seldomseenmaple.com. Kevin and his staff will take care of you. Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the Bourbon Road Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Shannon. We've got a great show in store for you today. And today on the show, our guest is Jason C. Jason, is it still Jason C?
Or you can use my full name.
Jason Callori, Mash and Drum. Old friend. Actually, I might even say somewhat of a mentor to me, because I think it's his YouTube channel that kind of gave me inspiration to kind of start the podcast. So we go back a long way. We've been on a number of adventures together, I should say. And it's great to have him on the show today to catch up a little bit. And today, Jason, we're going to sort of dive into some what we think are our surprising American whiskeys of 2022.
Yeah, I love it. It's a great topic. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Jim. It's really good to catch up with you, talk to you again, and go through this list. I mean, I probably had more disappointments than anything this year, but I will say the ones that surprised me that we'll talk about have really surprised me. So I'm looking forward to taking a deep dive with you on these.
Yeah. When I was thinking about this, it was surprising. Whiskeys can be good and bad, right? I mean, you can have a surprising whiskey that is just out of the box, blows you away because it's something special and different you've never had before.
Yep.
And on the other hand, you can have whiskey that kind of just disappointed you, just didn't quite measure up to what you thought it might be. Maybe it didn't measure up to the price, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's harder and harder to do that each passing year because prices just seem to go up. And it's almost like the limited releases or the new releases that come out, you're looking at paying normally $100 minimum, if not 200, to get any of these bottles these days. So, pricing has become, really hard to navigate, especially with the changing market. And there's still so many good bourbons that are just available on the shelf that, when you're reviewing these and you're kind of going through the costs and the differences and the value, it's really hard to kind of, judge because, I'll say most of the, special releases I've had this year or limited releases or, distillery releases haven't been still as good as some of the stuff I could just get on the shelf for a lot cheaper. So, and that I think that's the part that worries me a little bit about American whiskey.
I mean, I'm always excited to open the package, to open the bottle and see what's in there. I still get that, that little schoolboy kind of Christmas gift kind of excitement in me every time a bottle arrives or a friend drops one off or something. But you're right. You're not always pleasantly surprised. Sometimes you're a little disappointed. And honestly, there's such a large variety of whiskeys on the market now. Not like when we started this a few years back, right? Things were a little bit limited back then. We've got a lot to choose from today. And a lot of great whiskeys and a lot of, so-so whiskeys, right?
Yeah, you have brands that are extending their product lines. You have new blenders coming into the mix that I think are making interesting things, whether it be just straight up blends, double oak finishes. Rye was a big category this year. A lot of bourbon and rye blends, which I think were really interesting, most of them. But yeah, there's so much to choose from. Then I think you have the other side of it where you could kind of tell it's just, whiskey names and people getting into the business just to kind of make a buck and just to get their bottle on the shelf. But, I think for most folks, there's a marketing spin to that. And then for, bourbon drinkers and whiskey nerds and bourbon nerds, I think they can kind of see through some of that stuff. But it's true. There's still a FOMO aspect to it all, where you want to have the latest release. You want to, be able to taste what it, because it really doesn't matter sometimes, whatever I say as a reviewer or anybody else does, there's going to be a part of that singular person that's going to want to get that bottle anyway to taste it for themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. I agree with you completely. Well, I think we probably ought to get to the whiskey. We've got 8 bottles to go through on the show today. So viewers, sit back, relax, enjoy yourself, grab a pour of your own, and grab that surprising whiskey that you had this year and just join in with us. So surprisingly enough, I think our first whiskey is a rye, and it actually is the same rye. We both picked the same bottle.
Yeah, and this was by no means planned. We just jumped on before we recorded, and we're like, hey, what bottles do you have? And the first bottle ended up being one we both had, which is crazy. Why don't you let us know what it is?
All right. So we've got the Hard Truth Sweet Mash Rye out of Brown County, Indiana, Nashville, Indiana, out of the Hard Truth Distillery. And this is a sweet mash rye. And it's actually a fairly young rye, right?
Yeah, it's only 2 to 3 years old. I mean, and I think the flavor that you get in this bottle was what surprised, I think, both of us, how good and well-rounded of a rye it was. And I know you read the word sweet mash. I don't know if that plays into your brain a little bit, because it does drink very sweet for a rye. And I love it. It's got a really nice balance of rye spice and sweetness. It's a fantastic rye, one that just kind of came on the radar, had no idea what it was, and I tried it, and man, is it fantastic stuff.
And you've got a little in your glass, and so do I.
Yep.
It's got a nice fruity nose. For me, it's kind of got those spiced apples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. I think apple, caramel, a little bit of mint there from that rye spice. Yeah, it's really interesting to me, this bottle, how it really blends using that sweet mash process, how it really blends the those sweet and spicy notes. And it's just really, you just don't expect that from a 2 to 3 year rye. I think the only one that ever broke the mold for me that actually had that was Wilderness Trail. I think when Wilderness Trail was first coming out with their single barrel ryes, I was super impressed at how good they were for the age. And I think I would put this right up there with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to agree with you. Now, this one's kind of dark too. I mean, it's got great color to it. Surprisingly, for 2 to 3 years old, it looks more like what you would expect to see in a 5-year-old rye.
Yep. Yeah, good color to it. It's very viscous on the palate as well.
Now, this was a batch of 30 barrels. It's if I remember correctly, this is a 94% rye, 6% malted rye, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So 100% rye. They had 30 barrels in the batch.
So which batch do you have? Do you have batch?
This is batch 1.
Batch 1. Okay.
Yeah,
so I'm drinking batch 2.
Okay.
It's still pretty similar to what I tried from batch 1.
I think it ages a little bit between each batch. Not a lot, but a little bit. It gets a little bit older. And
I remember tasting this and just saying to myself, like, besides Wilderness Trail, I can't think of a first batch product that has blown me away like this. So to me, it's that good. I mean, there's like that mix of orchard fruit in it, but then it gets into, there's like a dark, like almost like coffee bean type thing going on too. Deep brown sugars. It's so good.
Yeah, I get a little bit of like raisin and licorice on the palate. But kind of more raisin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I when I had this blind the first time, I thought it was finished because it was so flavorful. And when they told me it was a 2-year rye, I couldn't even believe it. So
you tasted this one blind. That's awesome. Yeah. So have you been to the distillery?
I have not, because I just, I'm not in Indiana often. Usually when I'm in Indiana, I'm down at Starlight. So I definitely have to make a trip over there and see, Hard Truth and what they're working on, because it's good stuff. I think actually, going to be actually putting a video out on the next couple ryes here in the next couple weeks. So because
awesome.
I'm just so impressed with how good that rye is.
Well, it's a great place to go to and visit. The distillery is phenomenal, and the people there are really nice. The town that it's in is a great getaway for a day or a weekend. So definitely a nice place to go. So I love it. What's next on our list here? Let's see. I'm gonna let you lead out.
I don't have a bottle list yet, but Jack Daniel's was really nice enough to send me a sample to do a video on, which I did. It's the Jack Daniel's double barrel single malt finished in Oloroso sherry casks. I know it's kind of a mouthful, but this was a kind of a project, I guess, that Jack Daniel's, they've been working on it for years, trying to perfect, learning about single malt. Now, as you know, Brown-Forman owns Jack Daniel's as well as Old Forester, but they also own some pretty well-known single malt Scotch distilleries, including Glendronach, which is, for Scotch heads, Glendronach is an extremely well-known and very highly regarded producer of single malt Scotch. So I think Jack Daniel's, and speaking with Chris Fletcher, they had the opportunity to go over to Scotland and kind of learn about the whole process as they were starting it. And I think what Jack Daniel's created with this limited edition release is something I never would have expected. Now, we got to try some of their single malt in the Jack Daniel's Triple Mash that came out this year, which was a really nice $35 bottle. That was a blend though. So you had some of the bourbon, you had the rye, then you had their single malt in it. So we didn't really get to try the single malt in all its glory just yet until they released this bottle. And, for someone that wouldn't really expect much from a Jack Daniel's single malt, it really surprised me how good it was. It's like drinking raspberry jam, and it is so good.
Wow.
It is so good. Yeah.
So is this bottle available now?
It's just starting to hit, retail now. I mean, obviously, now this falls in line. The same bottles like the Barrel Proof Rye, the Heritage release, the what was the one? The Coy Hill, which was last year's release. So this is the next one in that lineup of limited edition special releases for the year. So but it's starting to hit the market now. I think some people have already gotten them. I've already seen them on secondary here and there. But yeah, they're out there, and I don't think it's going to be everyone's favorite because it is so different. It is a maltiness to it, but I will say when I tried it, I was surprised still there's that little bit of Jack Daniel's DNA in the backbone of it that you could taste. You still get a little bit of the maple syrup, the banana that's on the back end of it, but it's all layered with like that malty, brown sugary, raspberry jam and chocolate. It's an absolute stunner of a whiskey. And maybe I wasn't so much surprised that Jack Daniel's would put out or make something that's a single malt that's completely new that would be so good. Maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, but it sure as hell surprised me.
Well, I think single malts in general are coming into their own here in America, and it's an amazing trend, and it's one that I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, I mean, single malt's going to be where it's at, and it's finally getting a legal definition from the TTB. So by the end of the year, so I think it's going to be. This makes it easier for single malts, American single malts, to compete with other whiskey categories in the U.S. So it's an exciting time for them.
So Jason, how many videos a week are you putting out now?
About 3 plus a live stream. It's a lot.
It keeps you busy.
Yeah, definitely keeps me busy. But I love it. I love doing it. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't be doing it. So, and that's really kind of the crux of everything. You shouldn't really be doing it if you don't love it. So I love it. I love the community. I love my patrons. I love the people that I've met. It's hard to not keep going when you have so much, just unrelenting support. And, I couldn't be more thankful for them.
So you've got a pretty good sized community now of patrons and of viewers in general.
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of a family, right? I mean, how's it been growing that over the years?
It really is. I think COVID, really kind of sprung everything up because people were home a lot and watching Whiskey Tube, and the only thing that people really could do at home is drink a little. So they were tuning in and learning about all these channels, and a bunch of new channels also sprung up. I mean, there's channels that just do live streams as community hangouts now. They're not really putting out reviews or content, but they're just jumping on and inviting other people in the whiskey community that watch Whiskey Tube and YouTube to jump on and just hang out and talk about whiskey. And it's just like the most uncorrupted, like beautiful part of what I love about Whiskey Tube, just because it's just like a great bunch of people with different creeds and backgrounds. It doesn't matter what they believe or where they're from. Everyone's just there to talk about the whiskey and hang out and learn more about each other. And I think that's what's the amazing part.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, I mean, when you started, there were just a rare few, right, doing this around the world.
There was more than that, but I think there was, when I first started, I think there were like maybe 3 to 4 or 5 like main whiskey content creators that people look to. When I came around, there was still, the Bourbon Junkies had just kind of joined on at them. My buddy Scott from My Bourbon Journey, he was kind of already going. And there was a few more sprinkled in there too. And we all kind of came up together, through this time of COVID. And it really has become, the family has just grown larger. And I think in some cases it's gotten better. In very few cases, I think it's gotten worse just because it opens you up for a little bit more criticism, here and there from, there are a lot of very salty people in the whiskey game, it seems. So,
oh yeah. Self-proclaimed, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So I'm going to move on to my second surprising pour of the year. And this is from a very small distillery in Kentucky, not far from the Tennessee border, Dueling Grounds Distillery. This is the Lincoln Pinch Kentucky Straight Bourbon. It's a 4-year-old bourbon. This is a single barrel. This is actually a wheated bourbon, and it's 4 years old, and it's full strength, so 120 proof.
Wow!
And it's amazing. Now, I was telling you before the show, before we went on air, I was kind of saying, this bottle either is an amazing single barrel sent down from the heavens, or they just make really good whiskey there. So I'd like to think they make really good whiskey there. This is a spice drop candy for me on the nose. Like, those little sugar-coated, bell-shaped spice drop candies that you have at the holidays?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
It's all about that on the nose. It does have a little bit of licorice to it.
So that's 66 corn, 22 wheat, 11 barley. Is that the mash bill?
You caught me off guard. Normally, I do my research.
Reading it. I'm just reading it. I'm wondering if that's what it says in the bottle anywhere.
It does.
But I do like the bottle. I do like the bottle, the way it looks. I like the label. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really good. And now this place is super small. It's about the size of an old gas station, but very small place. But guess what, guys? They make their own stuff. 100% of it. They make it. They bottle it.
That's
they
awesome.
age it. They do it all. So if you are traveling between Louisville and Nashville, you get down just a little bit past Bowling Green, Kentucky, and turn off on the exit right before you hit the Tennessee line there. Turn off on Franklin, Kentucky exit. About 5 miles off the interstate there. You can go visit them and get a bottle for yourself. It's some really good whiskey. This is it's soft, but at the same time, it's layered with a lot of flavor. It has a lot of spiciness to it, and the finish on it is surprisingly long. Uncharacteristically so for a wheated bourbon, I think. It really carries a long finish.
Yeah, you would, with that, every time you drink a wheater, people think that it's automatically going to be like an easy experience. But, I've had a lot of more of the youthful side wheaters that have had a lot of spice to it that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, this does have a little bit of licorice on the palate too. But it's very, very mouth coating. And I think one of my notes from when we reviewed it was that it has kind of a candied jalapeno on the back end. So
so it's got that.
It's spicy.
So it's got that much spice.
Yeah. It's a spicy wheated bourbon, no doubt. But it's tastefully done. It's a really good. This is a really good barrel. I just hope they're all this good. Yeah. I will tell you this. I stopped in there to pick up the bottle one day, and it was like a revolving door. People in and out all day long, just buying bottles.
That's awesome. So my next bottle is the Chattanooga Founders 10th anniversary blend.
One I haven't had.
Yeah, which is one of those bottles where, again, I mean, I love what Chattanooga does, and I'm a huge fan of Tim Pearson and the whole team down there. Back in 2012, Chattanooga was blending and bottling their 1816 bottlings, but that was MGP. And, eventually, they had to, make their own stuff because, their whole mantra was, let's have whiskey back in Chattanooga. Well, to them, it's like, well, we're sitting here saying that Chattanooga whiskey, but we're buying it from MGP in Indiana. So once their stuff was ready to go, they developed their Tennessee High Malt, which is a high malt bourbon recipe. So the Chattanooga Founders is a blend of 3 whiskey recipes distilled in Chattanooga and Lawrenceburg, Indiana. So they kind of combined the past and the present to make this Founders blend. And you just wouldn't think a high malt and MGP would really work together as like a separate blend, but it really does. It is mouth coating. It is sweet. It is a little bit spicy. It's chocolatey. It's got a little smokiness to it as well. It's really delicious stuff. It's more of a chocolatey and rye, almost like a spicy tobacco type note to it. And I absolutely loved it. They really did a good job with it.
And can you get your hands on it at all, or is it pretty much get snapped up?
Apparently it is still around. Probably mostly in Tennessee. I'm not sure how much it got out of Tennessee, but I have some friends in Tennessee that say that they're still hanging around. So yeah, if you know anyone in Tennessee, have them grab you one.
Now, the Chattanooga distillery down there, the Chattanooga Whiskey Company, they kind of pioneered getting distilling back into Tennessee, didn't they? I mean, they were among the first to really get it going again.
Yeah, I mean, the story is really amazing. Chattanooga built a distillery without the legal license to actually distill anything. Chattanooga used to be a pretty bustling hub of distillation, pre-prohibition. They're right there on right there on the water, right there by the river. And, a lot of, steamships and boats coming in and out of there with whiskey. And once prohibition happened, like a lot of other places, it kind of stopped and then never really resurfaced. So Chattanooga, even though it's an interesting being in Tennessee, Jack Daniels is there. But it was one of the counties that just didn't allow distillation. So they really had to fight to get it lifted and be able to do that. And so they bet big, and it's worked out for them because they're putting out some really great whiskey.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Jason, we're up against a break here. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I've got at least two more, and you've got at least one more, right?
Yeah, and then we have some honorable mentions too, right?
And some honorable mentions. So, folks, don't go away. When we get back, a lot more to come. Definitely encourage you to check out seldomseenmaple.com. That's Seldom Seen Farms. Kevin and his staff there are doing a fantastic job. And like we said at the beginning of the show, they've got a 5,000 maple tap operation. They're a first-generation farm with a passion to produce the very best maple products available. They've won so many awards, and they have a very special, unique aging method for their syrup and for their barrel-aged coffee. They provide quality at a very affordable price. They're not a maple factory or a co-packer. Kevin and his staff there are farmers with a passion for maple. Like I said before, Kevin is a bourbon enthusiast. He's not just a paid sponsor. He's a friend of the show. He's a roadie, and he loves helping roadies get down the bourbon road. Make sure you check out seldomseenmaple.com. They're constantly producing great bourbon-aged maple syrups using barrels from the very best distilleries. They also return those barrels to the distilleries afterwards. Distilleries like New Riff, Leaper's Fork, Treaty Oak Distilling, the Bard Distillery, Pine Bluffs Distilling, Mystic Farm and Distillery, J. Riger. So many more to come. Kevin and his staff there are just spreading the love, spreading the maple syrup, making it happen. And at the end of the day, those barrels that age that maple syrup get refilled with some wonderful bourbon and make some great maple finished bourbon whiskey. How awesome is that? Definitely check out seldomseenmaple.com. Get you some. So we are back. I'm still sipping on a little bit of that Lincoln Pinch bourbon. I'm trying to get rid of it because I'm up next. I got another bottle.
That's right. Pressure's on.
Pressure's on. So next on my list. So I'm getting out of the bourbon now. I had a rye and I had a bourbon. Now I've got an American single pot still whiskey. This is the Virgin White Oak Cask from Taunua Distillery out of Colorado. This is the first single pot still whiskey to be produced in the United States. So for those who don't know what a single pot still whiskey is, if you're a bourbon lover and haven't delved much into Irish whiskey, a single pot still whiskey is a combination of both malted barley and unmalted barley. So back when the King of England was taxing the Irish people on their malt, they decided, well, if he's going to tax us on malt, we'll start using unmalted barley to make our whiskey, and we won't get taxed on that. So there's their way to get around taxes. But it became a very desirable mash bill, and even today, it's one of the best, right? Irish whiskeys.
Yeah, I mean, Irish whiskey is a huge growing, segment in whiskey in the world in general. So there's one other distillery. Well, there's a few that I know, but the one I've gotten to try is called ASW out of Georgia, in Atlanta, Georgia, and they're also making their own. I think you have to call it in Irish style American whiskey. Is that the language they have to use on the label? Because they can't call it Irish whiskey. Yeah. So I think you have to say Irish style. Yeah.
You can say Irish style. You can't call it Irish whiskey because that's protected the same way bourbon is. But it is an American whiskey category, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. ASW was the one that jumps out that I got to try, and I thought it was very impressive. It did taste very Irish, or Irish style, I should say. They did a single pot still as well. So really, really good stuff. I mean, some of those single pot stills, they get up in age, use that combination of malted and unmalted barley. They get really tropical. I get like pineapple and all these great deep, rich fruit flavors for days.
So this is really got the baking cabinet in it, kind of the spice cabinet, nutmeg. It's kind of buttery, still sweet.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, buttery is a pretty common term for Irish whiskeys or Irish style. You almost get like that butter and biscuits like type flavor profile.
Yeah, on the palate, it's honey. It's kind of, well, I would say it's a little more maple, kind of syrupy, brown sugar, kind of toffee, chocolate. I mean, it's got a lot going. It's very layered.
And what was the age on that one?
I don't know what the age on this one is. It's 86 proof, minimum of 3 years.
3 years, okay. That's a decent age. But yeah, as that stuff gets older, it's going to get definitely more tropical, I think. I'm not sure how far they're going to be aging their stuff, but yeah, that's what usually happens.
It settles in on the back of the palate with like a nice toasted oak, a little bit of ginger. It's got a lot of notes to it. I think you could sit and sip on this. This is sessionable for sure. This is one that you could sit down with a bottle with a buddy and make it disappear over the course of several hours. It's got a lot going on.
Yeah, I mean, at 86 proof, I mean, yeah, I can imagine it being pretty sessionable. Yep. Yeah, that's awesome.
So, Jason, you're doing a lot of barrel picks now, right?
Yeah, it's pretty nonstop. But that's what we want to bring to the to my patrons. We've kind of kept it small. So for those of you that don't know, I have combined with Scott from my Bourbon Journey to make the Mash and Journey Whiskey Club. And basically, if you're a patron, you get access to the picks. And as long as they don't sell out, which most of them usually do. But the whole deal of us doing this was to try to bring the best single barrels and the most variety that we could to everyone. And I think doing this so far 2 years, the first year we did about maybe 20-ish, 22, 23 picks. And this year we're already going to be up to about 50. So we've done a lot. There's been a lot in the last year that we've done, and we've already had picks lined up for next year. And we're just kind of, I think the thing that we've learned with so many groups doing picks now these days, we have to really be more cognizant of what we're picking and be a little bit more selective as to what we want to bring the group. So
sure. So I would imagine with 50 picks, you're not traveling to 50 places. So some of these are definitely samples coming to you, right?
Yeah, most of them are. I think the ones that we have been able to get out to, that's been really interesting. I would say Cedar Ridge is probably one of the most fun I had. Going over to Cedar Ridge in in Iowa and in the middle of corn country and learning what they do and their process. And when you kind of visit some of these smaller distilleries, out in the middle of nowhere, I mean, you really kind of get to see what they're working with and what their mantra is, what their whole mindset is when it comes to distilling, their philosophy, maybe some of the things that they do a little bit differently than other distilleries. It's really interesting when you kind of go to these different places. And I mean, you're all over Kentucky visiting distilleries, from the small ones to the big ones. Everybody does something a little bit different, which is, I think, what makes them unique.
Yeah, it's kind of a different experience when you get to go to the distillery itself, especially these smaller craft distilleries that are out and about, whether they be, in Iowa or in Ohio or wherever it may be. To get to these smaller distilleries and hear their stories and talk to their distillers and meet the people. They don't get a lot of media in there, like those that are on the Bourbon Trail. get a lot of traffic. But it's always great to go and experience that, and it makes for a great pick. It's a lot of fun. Have you been able to take any of your patrons on picks?
Yeah, that's as many as we can when we can. Obviously when COVID was happening, it was a little bit tougher to get out to certain areas, but we've had patrons on live picks before, helping pick barrels, virtually. Some Woodinvilles, we did some Driftless Glen, Jack Daniels. Actually, we did 2 barrels with them. We got 2 Jack Daniels single barrel proof picks. So, and all this, with getting as many patrons as we can involved if we can, because I think that's a big part of the experience too, because you want to feel like you're a part of it. And I make sure if we're allowed to do a sticker on the bottle, I definitely call out, the whole group that helped us, and they get to see their name on the sticker and everything. I think it's great. It's an experience.
So do you do all those sticker designs, or you and Scott do those sticker designs?
No, I make all of them. Scott can't even draw a stick figure. So yeah.
we love this guy.
Yeah, I love Scott, but you can't draw. So yeah.
All right. Well, I'll definitely say if you get a chance to try Taonua. By the way, Taonua is kind of an odd name, but it means new land. New land. It's Gaelic for new land. So this is their kind of way of saying that they're doing the Irish work over here in the U.S. now. So kind of cool.
I like.
All right, Jason, what do you have next? I'm excited.
So my last bottle is the Wild Turkey Unforgotten. This is their Master's Keep from this year. And Wild Turkey still remains my favorite, bourbon brand, distillery, whatever you want to call it. I love Wild Turkey. But based on last year's, I was not a fan of the toasted one that they brought out last year. I thought it was a good whiskey. It was a decent bourbon, but I didn't think it was Master's Keep worthy. So I don't know. I really wasn't sure what to expect with the Unforgotten. I wasn't really crazy about the name of it. I was kind of already prejudging it, but man, when I tasted it, yikes, was I wrong. This thing is such a good blend of straight bourbon and rye, and then finished in a rye cask. It's 105 proof. I think it's 13-year-old bourbon and 8 to 9-year-old rye. That's in the blend. And that's all Wild Turkey does. They have a bourbon and a rye. They don't really have much else unless you want to, talk about the wild honey, the liqueur. But this one is just sweet caramel, cinnamon, rye spice kind of comes into the balance as well. It gets fruity, gets gingery. It's just all over the palate. And my favorite part of this whiskey this year is just how much it sustains its spice from the front of the palate to the back. And every time you go back to it and sip it, it doesn't go flat. It doesn't lose that interesting quality to it that makes it so good. And I just think, I don't know, with so many of these releases coming out, and I think I was on kind of like the downturn where I was reviewing a lot of whiskeys where I just was not happy with. And I'm like, all right, come on, Wild Turkey Unforgotten. Let's see what happens. And then I tried it. I'm like, yes, Wild Turkey saves the day. This is so good.
And that's a little bit of Bruce, right?
Mm-hmm. This was
or a lot of Bruce,
Eddie
maybe.
A lot of Bruce, but had some. I think Eddie chose the cast, but it was really Bruce's idea to kind of put it all together and finish it in a rye cask. And I know Bruce was super proud of this one, and I love this bottle. I know some people were a little bit lukewarm on it. I think some people want it to be a bourbon or rye, but man, do I love how this blends. So big surprise for me. That's going to definitely. Yeah.
I was going to say that, that's okay because, not everybody has to like everything. That's why there's so much variety out there. We each get to choose our own lane. And, it's kind of with that bottle of, well, I'll talk about that later. I don't want to spoil the honorable mentions. So I'll just leave that. I'll leave that live for now.
Sounds good.
All right. So, well, I'm going to move on to my next bottle. And my next bottle is also a Wild Turkey. And this just happens to be the Wild Turkey 12-year 101 export. They brought it back, and I know everybody has heard that the export is back now, and pretty excited about it. And I just happened on a bottle of it because it's very hard to get, because it's only available in Japan, Korea, and Australia.
Yep. And
certain people who travel internationally can get it for you. So we had David Jennings on the show a couple weeks back, and this was one of the bottles we tasted with him, and we hadn't had it before. He had, and I was pretty excited to try it for the first time.
Yeah, it's that bottle really surprised me. I was lucky enough to get one too from someone traveling, and I don't know. There's a certain representation of just really good aged oak in that bottle that I'm super impressed with. Because you think sometimes Wild Turkey getting into that 12-year space, it could get a little bit oaky, tannic, maybe a little bit medicinal, but this does not. It's a beautifully crafted 12-year bourbon from Wild Turkey.
Yeah, I like to think it's still 101. It still has that, that Wild Turkey profile, but it's amped up a little bit on the cherry. In the brown sugar, it's got a nice cinnamon clove combination to it. When have you ever made a hot toddy? When you get that cinnamon and clove, sure. And it's got a nice balance of cinnamon and clove to it. It's just a wonderfully delicious whiskey. And Dave kind of dropped a bomb on us. We had him on the show. He's talking about his new book, Wild Turkey Musings, and he said, the Wild Turkey 12-year 101 export is probably my 2022 bourbon of the year. So, yeah, that's wow. That's from the man himself.
That's high praise from David. Yep. Yeah,
absolutely.
It is. It doesn't punch very high. It's even at 101 proof, I still think it drinks below that. For me personally, but. Man, the flavors that it has and the beautiful oak on it, it's a unbelievable release. I do wish we would see that in the States for more people to try that. And I hope that does come down the pipeline at some point.
Yeah, it would be awesome. I guess that's on everybody's wish list, is to have the 12-year 101 available here in the States. But we'll see.
I was just going to say, you never know.
You never know. A little bit of cherry on the nose, a little bit of cherry on the palate, and my goodness, dried cherries on the finish. I think the cherries carry through on this one. I really like it a lot. And I thought I had my bourbon of the year figured out, and we haven't announced yet. I'm getting close. This is definitely in the running.
In the mix you.
We'll see where it ends up. Yeah.
Yeah, this Unforgotten is definitely going to be up there. I'm just not sure what category I put it in. I think it's just going to be my top 10 bourbons and whiskeys because, this is a blend of bourbons and ryes. So you could either call it a rye or a bourbon, but it's just a really unique blend of straight whiskey. So I love it.
So what happened to the rum and bourbon kind of thing? Is it drifting away a little bit, or is it maintaining a little bit of steam?
Yeah, I think people are doing it, but I think the trend now is beer finished bourbons. I think that's what we're seeing more often is beer finishes. Stouts, porters, IPAs, pale ales, whatever beers people can get their hands on. I really feel like towards the later half of the year, that's what I've been seeing. Obviously, you have certain things that trend. Also, I think this year we saw a lot more ryes that are finished rather than bourbons that are finished. So, ryes finished in port, Madeira, apple brandy, whatever it may be. I'm just seeing. I felt like, and I kind of like that. I feel like I tend to like finished ryes more than bourbons because I think the rye holds up to the finish, where sometimes the bourbon can get overtaken by the finish.
I think that's very, very true. And I've noticed it a number of times. We receive a lot of bottles in, as you do as well, I'm sure, for reviews. And from time to time, you do get those bourbons that they've just been overpowered by the finishing. And ryes, yeah, they hold up a lot better to that, I think. Exactly.
They do. Yep.
So I got another question for you, and that is, what do you think do you think there's a little bit of consolidation going on in the whiskey world? We've had a lot of acquisitions going on lately.
Yeah. And I'll give a shout out to Fred Minnick. Listening to him at the beginning of or the end of last year, he kind of called it. He said that we're going to see a lot of consolidation, and that's what we've been seeing. You saw what happened with Wilderness Trail, and some other. Woodinville got bought recently, and there's just a lot happening with distilleries. Bardstown Bourbon Company as well was not immune to that either. But yeah, I think a lot of that is going to happen, especially with some of the smaller distilleries. Once they hit a certain point and they're making enough money for some investor to come in or one of the bigger brands to come in and buy something up, then I think the more that some of these brands, more that they could get underneath their umbrella, their portfolio, I think they're going to try to do it.
Now, some of the consolidation that took place back in the 80s and 90s, those brands were more or less relegated to the bottom shelf, right? A lot of them were anyway. Do you think some of that's going to happen now as well?
I would say yes. I mean, I don't think anything is out of the realm. I mean, look at Diageo. I mean, they just bought Balcones out of Texas, which is a huge single malt distillery. So I think nobody's immune to it at this point. I think we're just going to keep seeing it.
Yeah, I think it'll continue, and but still, we have a lot of small distilleries popping up, new distilleries popping up all the time. People wanting to get into the game. It seems like more and more lately, it is non-distilling producers, though.
Yeah, it's mostly non-distilling producers. I think a lot of people just want the name. Some people want the whiskey. Look at Bardstown Bourbon Company. I mean, they bought one of another. Oh, I'm actually maybe showing my hand a little bit here as one of my honorable mentions for surprise bourbons. Yeah, and that's Green River. Green River was sold to Bardstown Bourbon Company, and I thought it was, for Bardstown Bourbon Company to not only get that distillery, but get the names, get the products, and also have another distillery where they could produce whiskey. I think that's some of the other part of it that people aren't looking at. Some of these huge distilleries that are buying smaller ones, they just don't have enough capacity to keep up with it. So they want to buy another distillery if they can and just have some more space, have another still that they can use to produce more whiskey. So I think that's another big part of it as well. But yeah, Green River, I'll just say it now, that was for a $35 bourbon. That was one of the most impressive bourbons I had this year for the price, for the money, the high rye aspect of it. And another product that Green River makes is the Wheel Horse bourbon. And that's 101 proof bourbon that goes right up against Wild Turkey 101. I mean, I did those in a blind in a video, and I almost lost it because I couldn't tell what was what. And I'm like, oh my God, am I about to go against my beloved Wild Turkey 101? But those two really well priced brands from Green River are absolutely delicious, and those were a couple surprises for me.
Let's go ahead, since you kind of started off here talking about honorable mentions. These are whiskeys that didn't make our cut for the show, but we definitely want to make sure we give them a shout out.
Yep.
I had two whiskeys that were going to be, I was going to consider for most improved, basically the distillery or the expression that was most improved. And it was kind of a toss-up for me between two of them. One of them was Devil's River out of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
whose initial release kind of disappointed a little bit, I think. And then their most recent release that I had just maybe a month ago was a very nice surprise. Very nice. So if you've had Devil's River in the past, I would suggest that you try some of their latest bottles, and I think you'll find that they're much improved. The other one was Jephthah Creed Distillery. Jephthah Creed had a little bit of a rough start, as we all know, and some of their initial, at least their 4-grain whiskey, was kind of polarizing, I think, and not everybody accepted it well. But I will tell you this: that their more recent releases, particularly the red, white, and blue release they just had to honor Veterans Day, it has Bloody Butcher red corn in it. It has blue corn, and it has white sweet corn in it. It was pretty darn tasty. So they've got some good things going on. I did get to taste their more recent, well-aged 6-year wheated bourbon, and I have to say that it's delicious. So some good things coming out of there, and definitely worth a trip back around to Jephthah Creed to check them out again. They're also doing some contract distilling, and there's a Burnt Church Distillery out of South Carolina has a Johnny Fever expression, and that's made by Jephthah Creed, and it's actually pretty darn tasty. So I think
nice.
I think they got some good things going on. So most improved, anyway.
Most improved, yeah. I mean, if I had to pick a most improved, I probably will stay local here as well. I'll probably go with Watershed Distillery here in Columbus, Ohio. When I first moved here, they were using a very unique mash bill using spelt. And spelt is a pretty ubiquitous grain that you can find in and around Ohio. And I think to kind of utilize the spelt as a grain primarily in Ohio to use in the mash bill, I thought it was a good callback to, Ohio's roots. But at the same time, I just didn't think it really worked well in a mash bill, and I was not a fan. So what they did is they hired one of the distillers from Barton Distillery, came over to Watershed the last couple of years. He kind of transformed the mash bill into a little bit more of a traditional mash bill of corn, rye, malted barley, and their stuff has just been getting better and better each and every year. So I think Watershed has been doing some great things.
Awesome. I had one last one for me. Honorable mention, and it would have made the show for sure, except I drank it all. Mm-hmm. And I don't have any to taste. So,
well, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I had none left to really taste and give notes on. So, but it's Leopold Brothers 3-chamber rye, and for me, that is in my top probably 3 or 5 whiskeys of all times.
Really, all time?
But all time for me. But I have to understand the fact that profile is not for everybody, right? It's definitely you like it or you hate it, or you love it or you hate it, or whatever that dichotomy is.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with it. So
yeah, I would agree. It's very floral, very different. But I mean, when you're trying to recreate a rye style whiskey from, back in the 1800s using that style, I mean, it's going to be different. And I think I had no problem with it. I thought it was very unique. It was, like I said, it's very floral. It's very different, but I enjoyed it just because I think there's so much stuff out these days. You're trying to set yourselves apart, and that certainly did.
Yeah. I guess for me, it's just I'm always looking for that thing that's just out of the box, different. Somebody's just doing it crazy different, and you can't get that flavor anywhere else. And I'm the same way at a restaurant. If I get a plate and it's just something altogether different that I've never had before, I get really excited about it. So, Jason, I think we gave people a few things to think about here.
I think so. I think there's definitely a lot of stuff to look out before. Like I said, there's just so much, like we talked about, there's just so much stuff that has hit the market. Trying to like figure out like what surprised you, what didn't. It's kind of fun when you look back, because I hadn't really looked back at the whole catalog of everything that I tasted this year and really looked at, everything that impressed me. Like I said earlier, back to in the beginning of the show, I had a lot more stuff that disappointed me than anything this year. So I think it was kind of nice to look back to see what surprised me for the better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there to talk about what your favorite bourbon is, or what your bourbon of 2022 is, or where you had top 5 ryes or top 5 bourbons. There's plenty of opportunities to talk about those things, but not a lot of people are talking about what are those few bourbons that just took me by surprise.
Exactly.
And I think we came up with a few. So,
yeah, I think so.
All right. Well, I'd like to give an opportunity for our listeners to know where to find you, to learn more about the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room and what you have going on. So if you take a minute and let them know a little bit more about how to get in touch with you and your streams, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Just search the Mash and Drum on YouTube. You could find the channel. Definitely subscribe and let me know what you think about some of the reviews and the comments. Always like hearing from everybody. But like I mentioned, I do about 3 to 4 videos a week. I do my live streams every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We always have either great guests on. I'm doing blind tastings. I'm tasting new whiskeys. I give you the news. So there's a lot that I go through on a given Wednesday night, so everyone can kind of stay in the loop and just kind of get my personal feelings on some of the stuff going around in the whiskey world. Also, you can find me at the Mash and Drum on Instagram as well. And if you're interested in trying some of the barrel picks, you could join my Patreon. You just go to patreon.com/themashanddrum, and you can join for as little as $3. And you can get some access to some great barrel picks that we have coming up. And next year, I think going to maybe take the deep dive and maybe look at a possible bourbon blend to come out, for myself. So that's something I'm looking at doing. We'll see what happens. Not even sure where to start with the logistics of it, but I know what profile I want. I think I have something in mind that I think everybody will really enjoy. So I'm looking forward to taking a deep dive on that, or I may hate it. We'll see what happens.
This is real blend again. This is not playing around, right?
Yeah, this would be a blend to market, bottle that I would want to actually put my name on it, and hopefully people will enjoy. So we'll see what happens.
That is so exciting. Jason, it's been a blast having you on again. We need to get you back again from time to time. Like I said earlier in the show, you're kind of one of those who inspired me to start the podcast in the first place. I got this face for radio, so you won't find me on YouTube. You'll find me on podcasts. But nevertheless, we had some great times together in the early days, and it's nice to get back together once in a while and have an opportunity to record and put down an episode. Thank you so much for coming. We wish you all the luck in the world. Listeners, if you get a chance, check out Jason on all his social medias and on his YouTube channel. You'll love the Mash and Drum. It's an amazing stream to watch. So, all right, Jason, thanks again.
Thanks for having me on, Jim. It was really great catching up. And whenever you want to have me on again, just let me know.
We'll do it. Well, you can find the Bourbon Road on all social medias. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. You can find us on TikTok. You can definitely find us on our private Facebook group called the Bourbon Roadies. Make sure you search us out on Facebook. You'll definitely enjoy that group. You got to answer 3 questions to become a member, though. Do you like bourbon? Do you agree to play nice? And are you 21? Because we don't allow anyone in there under the age of 21. We'd love to have you come in. In that group, we discuss what we're drinking. We take pictures of our bourbon. We share bourbon with each other. It's a great group of people, 3,000 strong. Come in and have a great time with us. Make sure you don't miss a show. Every single week we'll come out with an episode. We'll have a guest on. Sometimes we'll deep dive a topic. We'll have several expressions. One way to make sure you don't miss an episode is to go to the top of the app you're listening to us on now and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll get that notification every week that we've come out with a new episode, and you can enjoy a new show. So we'd love to have you subscribe. We'd also love to have you leave us a review. If you've listened to the show and you enjoy it, make sure you leave the Bourbon Road a review. It always helps us get into that next door, get to that next distillery, have that next guest on the show. We're very approachable. Reach out to us. You can always hit us up on email. I'm jim@thebourbonroad.com, but you can always just send an email to team@thebourbonroad.com. Brian will get a copy. I'll get a copy. Tyler will get a copy. We'd love to hear from you. We take your suggestions. We'll put them to work. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Look forward to talking to you again next week. Until then, we'll see you down the Bourbon Road.